We say we are talking about responsibility to protect. Is an important plank of state intervention in the 20th and 21st. Does the state have the right to intervene in the affairs of other states? And I explained that there is a major barrier to state intervention in the affairs of other states. Is that what that thing we call sovereignty? And sovereignty is enshrined in the article, in the charter of the United Nations organization. Article 2 specifically states that no state has the right to interfere, yes, in the internal affairs of one. They call it non-interference clause. They have it in OAU and we have it in the EU too. That no state has the right to interfere in the affairs of other states in the world. It is enshrined, it is captured. So we are not trying to be moralistic. That was why that. But what we now noticed that the government of state A is killing all the citizens of that state A. Do you have the right as state B to intervene? And that was why I took it to the individual level. That you have your family, he has his family there. He's not trying to use the child as for money ritual. Do you have the right to intervene? The woman will tell you that that is her child. She gave birth to the child. She didn't touch your child. So you have no business in whatever it is she's trying to do to her child. So we cannot, and I gave you the historical example. 1994, when they carried out the Rwanda genocide now, the world did not intervene at all. The world, when the Hutus and the Tutsis, in fact, there are United Nations peacekeepers in that country there, they watched, they stood by, they stood down, they did not intervene in that thing. And because they said the state has sovereignty, when they had the Bosnia-Herzegovinian crisis, when Milosevic too was killing the Croats, then that is on something. The Europeans were wringing their hands. It's an independent state. We cannot intervene in its internal affair. And the United Nations Charter gave them that backing. And again, if I keep referring to that thing, there's that thing they call sovereign. Remember, it's what you do to your neighbor that your neighbor will do to you. If he's beating his child now and you intervene, then he has a right to, no matter how legitimate you. So that has actually affected global intervention until you now had this wonderful African, United Nations Secretary General, Kofi Annan. Kofi Annan and Deng was the Sudanese ambassador to the UN back then. And they were not the one now reason that said, no, we cannot stand by morally, which is where mommy comes in. I mean, that a woman wants to go and use the child for money rituals, and you're not saying, since it's not your child, it is not your business. That no, we cannot say because of sovereignty. Now that we now notice that a country is trying to kill all its citizens, and we would not actually say, so they're now trying to redefine that sovereignty to allow states to intervene in the affairs of other states, which is what we call responsibility to protect, R2P. So they're now trying to now redefine that sovereignty from its absolute power, which the state has over it, and instead unrestrained by law. But they now said, like you said, that if a woman is trying to use the child for money ritual, as a responsible citizen, you intervene now, but the woman can still counter, is it your child? Are you my? So we are not trying to change that thing. Those ones now realize that there are a lot of crises going on in the world. I'm giving the example of Haiti, for example, and what Abacha did to Nigeria, that the world turned its back on Nigeria and they did not intervene. Remember, they begged Abacha not to kill Ken Saro-Wiwa. Can you remember? And he still went ahead to kill them because he has sovereignty. It is sovereignty. The same way Benin has sovereignty, the same way Nigeria has sovereignty, the same way Ukraine has sovereignty, the same way Russia has sovereignty. A state has the right to defend itself when its sovereignty is being violated. Article 7 of the United Nations Charter, which is why Ukraine is resisting Russia. A state has the right to defend itself. So what they are now saying is no. Defense simply means protection from external aggression. But then we are not talking of the state killing. They now ask that question, which is important again, in case the state wants to now take them to the. On what ground should the state? Kofi Annan, the United Nations Secretary General, then with that Deng, now modified that definition. He then said, no, sovereignty comes with responsibility. Responsibility. Sovereignty comes with responsibility. That is, a state has the right, that's other state has the right to intervene if they notice that there is abuse of that sovereignty within the state. that they are interested in. That is, if the state is not responsible in carrying out its obligation to its city, exactly. I don't know if you get the idea that you have absolute sovereignty. Now, listen, you have to have absolute sovereignty. Nobody is fighting you with your sovereignty. But then you must be responsible in the discharge of that your power. Exactly, that is the key. So that means now, once they discover that a state is not responsible to its citizens, and then this international community has the right there. So that was how they used that thing. That is where that idea, responsibility to protect, now came in. You know, with what they witnessed for that of Rwanda, with what they witnessed in Bosnia, Milosevic, yes, with what they witnessed under Milosevic back then, that was in Europe, that they were wringing their hands, and they didn't do it. With what is going on now in the Sudan, you know, two warlords have actually virtually turned Sudan into a war zone. I don't know if you are aware. One is the head of the military. The other one is the head of the militia. They've turned that country to something else, really. And again, we talked about Sudan now, presently. Then they have that same problem again in Congo now, presently. M23, one rebel group being sponsored by Rwanda, has taken almost half of the country as it is. So people are now saying again, what happened in Rwanda gradually is actually happening. Are you not going to intervene? So the world wanted to talk about this sovereignty, and I said, no. The government of that state must be seen to be responsible in the discharge of, that will affect dictators. So once they agree that you are not responsible in the discharge of your responsibility to your citizens now, then that state has the right to intervene, which is why you can stop the woman from using the sun for money ritual based on that clause. Remember, I said they modified the definition of sovereignty now to accommodate that thing. That was why they call it responsibility to protect. In other words, whether you like it or not, it is our responsibility. It is yours to stop that man from beating the wife. Yes, it's a marriage now. Live happily ever after, not to beat her to death ever after. And so when you've noticed that they violated that thing, that vow of marriage, then as a citizen, you have the right to, which boils down to what you said at the beginning, that in America, when they notice Kinikon, they call. They said it's a responsibility. So we are now taking it to a state now. When a state fails to discharge its responsibility appropriately, that means the sovereignty of that state can be violated for what you call the greater good. Responsibility to protect has been one of the major instruments that the United Nations is now using to intervene in conflict of states within the international political system. When the state is now seen to be abdicating its responsibility to its citizen. Exactly. When a state is seen to be, a family is seen to be abdicating its responsibility, they do that in the West a lot. To the family, they take the child away. I hope you are aware. They take the child away and it becomes property of the state. We went out. Your son mistakenly took your gun. Somebody saw it from the window. They will call child services. And that is the end. That you are irresponsible. Your irresponsibility has deprived you of your right over your own son. Responsibility to protect has three principles enshrined within it. So it has three principles enshrined within it. Responsibility to prevent, responsibility to react, then responsibility to rebuild. Ladies and gentlemen, it was on that principle that America intervened in Iraq. Yes, to rebuild, to prevent, react, rebuild. It was based on that principle that America intervened in Iraq 2001 and eventually again, in 2003. That they said that Saddam Hussein was a threat to his own people, he's a threat to the international community, he has weapons of mass destruction. You remember, to intervene, to use that P2P, R2P, you have to go through the United Nations. You have to present your case. They have to see it, that it is true, so that nobody will abuse that power or that privilege. So that was what they used in dealing with Iraq, Saddam Hussein. It was the same thing the European Union with France and the rest of them used in dealing with Libya. Libya is a threat to his own people. He's repressing them. He's violating their fundamental human rights. They could not talk. He's starving. That was the same principle they actually used to deal with Libya, then to deal with Iraq. So I said it has three principles enshrined within it. Responsibility to protect. Yes, three. to prevent. Your responsibility to prevent, which is what you are trying to say. You notice, yeah, come to our area. There's some to prevent, to react, then to rebuild. Three things. Responsibility to protect is one of the greatest tools of the UN, of the international community till today. But then again, we now wonder, is it that they are selective? Why have they not intervened in what is? Remember, the major barrier to R2P before was sovereignty. So they tweaked the definition to allow state neighbors to intervene in the affairs of other states when they notice that those other states are citizens, the people within it of its own sorry, I hope you are aware that states also carries out terrorism on it. For you to say, so stop fighting. Don't fight. What is the reason why you are trying to fight? Fighting is not good. Two, they are fighting. You stop fighting, separate them. Three, after the peace building, what is it? What exactly is your problem?
The government of the state is not allowing.
No. That is why we are calling it intervention. Now they won't allow you to intervene. You bring overwhelming superiority. Saddam didn't want them to intervene. Have you forgotten? See, it was the same principle America and the West wanted to use to remove Assad of Syria. It was Russia that said no. You forgotten the Syrian civil war. That eventually the rebels succeeded in chasing the man from that place last year, if I remember. It is the same thing now. They will bring over. I've forgotten Operation Desert Storm. That was what America used to chase Saddam Hussein. You will have the right to say no, but they will bring overwhelming force. They will bring overwhelming force and force you to reckon with the sovereignty or rights of your citizen. Exactly. So, to prevent, yes, to prevent, the first thing, as in they say, you put early warning system in place. Early warning system in place. Early warning system in place. In Nigeria, we will have all this neighborhood watch. Now, I mean, before that thing gets to the state level, they are there. What they cannot handle, they have a way of doing about to the state. As I said, early warning system to prevent. So you would have known what is coming. And you look for ways now to resolve that thing before it becomes a big issue. As I said, to prevent. To prevent is better than to react. Okay, so you did not prevent. The war is now going on. They are now killing themselves now. And so the international community tried to do that for Haiti by sending police officers. I'm sure police officers is not what they need. They need real army to bring those warlords to their needs. In fact, Israel tried to provide that reason as a justification for invading Gaza. That is trying to protect the Gazans from terrorists, Hamas. Before you can use those three principles, it has to go through United Nations organization so that you won't abuse it. The tendency that there is nothing backing that thing, powerful state can abuse that privilege and use it as an excuse to invade states that are not really powerful. So to prevent such an eventuality, and that was why they said, no, you must state your case before the UN. State your case before the United Nations Security Council. Now, when the Security Council fails to act, most of the time they don't act because of their differences. They are the most powerful countries in the world. Then you take your case to the United Nations General Assembly. You take your case to the United Nations General Assembly. When the General Assembly fails to act again, you take your case to regional organization, maybe like ECOWAS or OAU. When they fail to act again, then you can do that in America did for Iraq. Coalition of the willing. You are moral soldiers. You are ready to act when the state is not acting. And when that fails, eventually, you can act as an individual. Can you see the cascade? Say, take your case to the United Nations organization, plead your cause, state your reason. When they fail to act, or if they fail to act, take your case to the United Nations General Assembly. When that fails to act, take your case to the regional organization. It can be ECOWAS, it can be EU, it can be Islamic State of West, anything. Take your case. When they still fail to act, again, remember, I said we will have, which was what America used in dealing with Iraq, 2003, coalition of the willing. That was why Bush said, if you are not for America, you are against, yes, willing. You are against America. Coalition of the willing. of the willing. Yes, you can see it the same way I can see it, they can see it, so we'll do it together since the world has actually refused there to act. And if that is not working again, round it up, remember, a state has sovereignty. A state has sovereignty. So they now redefine that sovereignty. Before, they said it is the absolute power which a state has over its citizens or restrained by anybody. Now listen, did I ask an important question? Where did that sovereignty come from? This sovereignty that you are saying the state actually has, where did it actually come from? So they now said that sovereignty at the beginning, in the 17th, 18th, the 19th century, they argue that the sovereignty actually came from God. But by 20th century, they said no, sovereignty did not come from God. Sovereignty actually came from the people. Tinubu is our president because we made him our president. So the man is using that power to govern Nigeria. Trump is the president of America, not because God gave him that, no, but because the people voted for him. So that means logically, sovereignty resides in the people. So that means you should use your sovereignty to protect the people responsibly. Use your sovereignty to protect the people responsibly. But if you now use it, lost that power, that legality, legitimacy over governing of the governance of your own people.